Welcome to the Fat Games podcast. My name is Blair Pyle, and we've got my other co-host.
My name is Gary, the other half of Phat Games.
And on this episode, we have a very special guest, because all of our guests are very special. The amazing, the wonderful, the handsome Steve Orlando.
Hey, thanks. Nice to be here. Appreciate that.
Glad to have you.
I mean, it's nice to be, special amongst a bunch of other special people. So
even I feel special sometimes.
We're all special. So, Steve, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for doing this.
Sure.
Why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I guess you can still call me a game developer, although as you'll probably get into, it's not something that I'm currently really into. But I am the game developer of Treasure Adventure World, a Treasure Adventure game. It's not really how I define myself now, but it's for a long time it was. So I mean, we'll say I'm a game developer for now. Do you want me to start with how I got into it, or?
Yeah, how did you get into making games? Like, what brought you towards this wonderful passion?
It's definitely not it was not a direct path for me at all. I mean, I've always loved games as a kid. I'm almost approaching 40 years old. So when I was in college, game design wasn't really a thing you went into, and I didn't know much about game development or game design other than it was very difficult, and it was done by programming lines of code into a computer, and it seemed like you had to be there 16 to 18 hours a day, and it really wasn't appealing to me until I guess around 2008 2009, when I started seeing a lot of some smaller indie teams coming up with cool concepts, and also was starting to see that game development tools had come so far that you could develop a game without knowing the nitty gritty of code and
without building the engine.
Exactly. So it got something that you could get started with more easily, and little game development tools and level editor stuff was always something I was interested in as a kid. So I kind of just applied that idea to some little projects that grew into a bigger project that just kept growing and growing, and went from a hobby essentially into a mini career for a while, and then to whatever I'm at now.
So would you say that did you ever actually want to do it when you were a kid? Like because I can relate to that, and we were both around the same age, and there wasn't a lot of education behind that, no game development courses in college or whatever. But was it always a passion of yours? Because you and I both grew up with the 8 and 16-bit era games, and that awesome, even a 32-bit era. That was our childhood. Is that what sort of motivated you, or?
Yeah, it's more, like I said, I don't think when I was younger I thought I could make a game. I didn't think it was even possible. So no, I don't think I thought of that. But I always wanted to be part of the gaming industry somehow. I had a passion for it, and I always wanted. I also have a creative streak, and so I wanted to put that towards something that I was passionate for, which is gaming. So even though I didn't make games when I was a kid, I did fan websites. And I had a fan club for Donkey Kong Country when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
An official Nintendo Donkey Kong fan club, recognized, stuff like that. And I had the first Smash Brothers, English speaking Smash Brothers site. I imported the game months before it released, and then was ripping apart the manual and figured out all the mechanics of the game. Before it even came out in the States, I had a website up for English players ready to go on day one. And so stuff like that. I got really into that stuff, and then I left that stuff behind when I was in college, because it all seems like that's what I did as a kid. And I went into a whole different direction in college, nothing about games or anything. And then after, when I was done with college and I was just, working a boring job, and I started to get inspired by games like Cave Story and these other smaller little indie things that were made by one person or two people. And then again, just picking up some of these game tools and just realizing how easy and fun it was to make simple games, and I just kept growing. And I think we'll probably touch on this later, but I was realizing I'm years away now from releasing Treasure Adventure World, and I thought a lot about how I did it and what I'm going to do in the future. And I realized that my naivete, my not knowing essentially what it took to make a game is what allowed me to do it, because I didn't realize what was ahead of me. You know what I mean? I was having fun, and I was enjoying it. So I just kept going, and things were working. But years and years later, I realized I built this quagmire almost, where I was in a difficult position, and I didn't realize, you know what I mean? It's like it was too late to go back or whatever. It's a hard thing. So
it
started off
right.
It started off as like pure, just like fun for sure. You know, just yeah.
Well, actually, let's jump right into it then. So, Treasure Adventure Game was released back in 2011 on Steam, and then I don't know if Treasure Adventure World is considered a direct sequel or just a spiritual sequel, but that was released back in 2018 at this point.
Yeah, I just make a small correction. Treasure Adventure Game was never on Steam until recently, but it was at least on GOG in 2011.
Okay.
So yeah, no,
okay,
yeah, no big deal, no big deal. But it's fine.
So now I saw it on Steam though. But
it
anyway.
is out now, but that's more recent. So yeah, I recently put up on Steam like a year ago maybe, but yeah.
Oh, really?
Originally,
recently?
Yeah, but yeah, it was like something I should have done years ago, and I was like, oh, I should probably do that. But yeah, no, originally it was GOG, and that does kind of tie into the whole story, but later. But
so let's get into it then. So
yeah.
So Treasure Adventure Game. This was you had a few other titles that tied into this, a few other prototypes, if that's the way to classify them.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That really sort of led to this. And Treasure Adventure Game had a lot of positive feedback from everything I saw. People loved it. That was really cute and a lot of fun. So tell us about it.
Yeah. So Treasure Adventure Game it was fun for me too. I mean, it was like, it was a lot of work. It was years of work, and there were times I was like, I'm never going to finish this. But yeah, man, that game was a pure passion project. I just put everything that I wanted in a game into that. At least that's what I thought at the time, That's literally how the name came about. It's like Treasure Adventure Game, where like these like ideas I had, like, because I was trying to do these higher concepts before that, where like it was doing something a little bit different. I realized, I just want a game where I run around, collect treasure. It's a big adventure. Like those are the things that I was focusing on. So when I was developing the original design documents, I just kind of kept that name as like prototype name. But yeah, it was just meant to be like everything I put in it was something I was enjoying. And when I stopped enjoying it, I stopped working on that. And I moved on to the next part. And yeah, and so.
Wait, so you actually, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. That's pretty much it.
You did these, you actually did game design documents for Treasure Adventure Game?
I mean, they were simple. They were more like storyboards, I guess. It was like I drew in pixel art what I imagined scenes from the game would look like before I actually had the game. So that was like, and then I used those as inspiration. I was like that. So I'm gonna get like I had this cool scene with like the ghost where you get to the ghost island and you have the little like ghost hunting thing. And I was like, okay, maybe that's like 2/3 of the way in the game is you'll get to the ghost island. So I just kept that image in my mind, like I'm gonna get to that something like eventually. A year from now, I'll get to that level, and that kind of thing. So
I can totally relate to the long game with respect to game design. Our current project is a JRPG, and it won't be done until like maybe like 2026. Who knows? I keep changing the year every time we talk about this podcast.
But see, that's at least a realistic deadline. In my head at the time, I kept thinking this will be 3 months from now. I'll be done. There'll be another 3 months. I'll be done because it didn't realize how long it would all take. But.
It's not the code, it's everything else. So, okay, we had 10 years ago, Treasure Adventure Game on GOG, very recently Steam, very much a PC-only release. I've never played it as a result of that. So, Treasure Adventure World, released about 3 years ago.
That's right.
Let's talk about that one.
Sure. So that's like, this is the big one. So yeah, so Treasure Adventure Game came out. I released it on GOG, and it got some attention there. It did, like you said, some people definitely enjoyed it, and it won a few small awards. So it felt I was riding high on that, like that I had something there, and I definitely wanted to do something more there because I wasn't making any money on the game. It was freeware, and it was kind of freeware on purpose because I knew that would reach a large audience, and I also wasn't like confident in myself and thinking that people would want to pay for it in a way at the time. So I put it out as free, and it did get a lot of people to play it as a result, including one of the people who co-founded Chucklefish. And at the time, they were riding high because they had just kickstarted Starbound, and they had just released and published another indie developer for Risk of Rain. So when I got approached by them to do something, it was like kind of like, someone who like is just doing this as a hobby, who was kind of outside of the industry, was totally blown away and was like, yeah, this is maybe I do have something here, and I should definitely take advantage of this opportunity. And what they proposed was taking my little game and basically turning it into something bigger, and a more commercially viable product, and something that, because we already had the framework for something good there, and we just wanted to like turn into something cooler. So it actually really isn't a sequel, as more it is almost like a remake. So I went from making a game, put it out, and then just instantly turned around and remade it, build it bigger and better, So
I can relate to that.
yeah. And it seemed to me like at the time I was like, well, this is smart because I got a backing of this publisher, and I'm making a game that I don't have to redesign from scratch because I already got the solid design here. This is going to be like cake. Like I'll pump this out in a year, no problem. But yeah, I mean, I had no idea what I was getting into because I had only made that game up to that point, which was a small little pixel art platformer. And, there was a lot, we really wanted to raise the fidelity of the game a lot, not just in the art style, but, everything. So we really wanted to pump it up. So what I thought would be maybe like a one-to-one transition from pixel art to this nicer style ended up being way more complicated. When we first did our first pass and we just basically turned the pixel art into flat art, it looked like crap. Like it looked like utter crap. And we're like, what is wrong? Like we realized we needed like layer upon layer of like added artwork to really like, it was like more like an exponential increase of like what it took to make it look better, So these were all things that I had not planned on. So it quickly ballooned, became a much longer project than I had planned on. So.
Okay, so you had a team for Treasure Adventure World. I believe it was like a mutual friend of you and Blair's, Craig Barnes, as your artist, and Christine Crossley, I believe. Tell us about your experience working with them.
Sure. Yeah. So Christine did the art, and Craig did some music. Yeah, Christine was really the person who I was with almost from the beginning. So actually, so that I did all the pixel art for the first game, and going forward, I wanted to have an artist for sure. So that was the first thing I talked about with Chucklefish was like, I need an artist, and I don't really have any connections. I don't really know who we can do it. So they connected me with her, it was probably the best thing they did for me, honestly, because we worked so well together. Like we meshed immediately. She got what I was going for in the game. She worked hard, and when even though there were times when like we had to take breaks or she had to take breaks and I had to take breaks from the game development, we'd always come back to it and be like, leave right where we left off. So working with her, I mean, we're still friends and we still do work some stuff together. Like, yeah, that's one of the best like connections I made in the whole thing. Same thing with Craig. And actually that's like really, I would say the best takeaway of the whole process. Like it wasn't even that I made a game. It was meeting people like Blair, meeting people like Craig, Christina, like these people that I met doing this, going to conventions stuff, like these are like long, like friendships I have for life. So now, like years later, like that's the most important thing that I actually take away from all those years for sure. So,
geez, man, that like brings like a tear to my eye because I definitely relate. Because meeting you was definitely a highlight of the last few years working on games. Christine did some beautiful artwork for the game. Like the game looks phenomenal. Great job.
Yep, right. That's her. You're there.
Oh, the poster in the background that you got there.
Yeah, she did that. That was what she designed for our convention. Yeah, we brought that all the different conventions we did. So
that's really nice. So, will we ever see a Switch release for Treasure Adventure World?
It is certainly possible, but so the problem is basically time and money, right? Like the two things that no one has. The time it would take for me to do it, and honestly, I just don't really have the energy at this point to do it myself. So I have looked into getting it ported, and it just, unfortunately, the cost is a little out of my league right now. And this goes into the fact that the game ultimately didn't perform as well as I'd hoped it would, and kind of is what led to like me deciding to get away from game development for a bit and stuff. So like it didn't, I mean, ultimately we didn't got there yet, but it kind of didn't work out ultimately. And so doing a port, while it's a really cool idea and it probably would make money, it's hard to justify because the Switch store is also getting swamped. It's like a risk, it's a really risky move to make if you don't, unless I was going to do it myself and take the time to do it and port it, which would take me probably years at this point, extra work. I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. So it is possible though, down the road. It's always possible.
All right. So you mentioned Chucklefish earlier. They published Treasure Adventure World. and they have also done a number of other big indie titles, such as Stardew Valley, which I think everyone knows, and very recently Eastward, which I'm actually currently playing through, and
awesome.
I really enjoy it. Yeah, it's a great game. What was your experience like working with them?
Yeah, so well, we also, there's, I don't know if you follow the news and all that stuff too, but there's also been like news stories that come out about certain things that happen, allegations that have happened. I don't want to talk about that stuff because I didn't experience any of that personally. Personally, for me, Chucklefish was a bit of a disappointment, but they didn't do anything. They basically did right by me ultimately, even though they flopped on the game. I think what happened was the people who were supposed to be kind of involved in marketing the game got let go or moved on shortly before it was time for me to launch. And we ended up working with people who were like just a little bit more green, I guess, in the world of marketing games. It just, we kind of ended up, the timing was bad, I think. There was a shakeup there internally that I found out about later, which I think was part of what was going on behind the scenes. So, but ultimately, so even though they sort of flopped in the marketing of it and the game didn't reach its audience, the deal that we ultimately struck wasn't something that where they screwed me over or anything. In fact, just the opposite. They kind of did right at the end by me. So,
but were you in any way disappointed the fact that it didn't do as well as it could have? Because I actually think Treasure Adventure World is a great game. I've never played through it in full because I don't have a PC, unfortunately. But the marketing is really important. The social media marketing, the articles on whatever gaming website that you may follow, that stuff, well, not necessarily doesn't guarantee anything, does have an impact.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, you're right. And I was trying to do some of that stuff myself. And I think, the onus was partially on me to do that stuff. And I dropped the ball on a lot of that stuff too, because honestly, that's not why I got into this. This was originally a hobby for me because I was enjoying making games. I don't enjoy hawking stuff on social media. I just don't. So every time I had to, and so, that's what you have to do to be successful. And I naively, again, was thinking, well, that's what the publisher's for. So I don't need to worry about that stuff as much. I'll do it. I'll go to conventions and I'll do it, but I'm not going to focus my energies on this because I need to focus my energies on making a game. And so I did rely on them. I counted on them quite a bit to do that part. And yeah, they definitely dropped the ball on that part for sure. Yeah. And, but
because that is the only reason I'd reach out to a publisher for that help, because I think, Gary, and maybe you agree with me or not, I feel like we don't need help on the other areas. We need help on the promotion because
we need help on all the areas that we don't like.
We don't like and we suck at.
Well, that was ultimately kind of what they were promising the whole time was you make your game, I mostly had to self-fund it. And then but then when it comes to that, we've got all these resources, and they did use some of the resources. It wasn't like they didn't spend any money on us either. They hired a professional QA team to work on the game for us, which is something I certainly couldn't have afforded. They helped with a lot of aspects, trailer design, just helping with general testing and giving us feedback back and forth. And there's a lot of experienced, talented people over there. It was a great resource. But like I said, I think we just, the timing things, there was a shakeup there. Timing was bad. And, we just got left kind of in the lurch a little bit. I think maybe they didn't have huge confidence in the game. In the years that it took us to make the game, the industry changed a lot. The indie scene became crowded. A lot of talented people left the AAA industry, and we were competing with them all of a sudden. It just changed in the time it took me to make the game. There's so many aspects. I can't, you certainly can't blame any one thing, but that certainly is a big part.
How long was Treasure Adventure World under development for?
Well, when did it come out? 2018, 2017? What was it? 2018. Yeah, 2018. And I started it in 2012. So 6 years.
Wow, that's probably as long as they're going to be working on Kids of Karendow.
Yeah, so look forward to.
Great. Would you recommend Chucklefish to other indies?
I mean, if they're going to fund the game for you, sure. If they're willing to put money up front, yeah, definitely. And it's a good you know, and you think it's a good deal and your attorney looked at it or whatever. Yeah, I mean, they're not, that's wrong with them. In fact, they probably since then have gotten like, you know, the people who marketed my game probably learned a lot from it. And we're like, well, we won't do that again. And you know what I mean? Like they're probably fine. I don't know. I don't have experience with any other publishers, so I can't compare them. But they have a lot of successes under their belt. They have more successes than failures. I'm like one of their only failures. So odds are, if you go with them, you're probably going to make a good. You're going to be successful. So
It makes me curious as what they did with Eastward, though, because I've heard a lot of. I mean, I'm really enjoying the game. It's Eastward is kind of a slower. It's an action RPG with a lot of puzzle elements. It is kind of a slower pace in terms of the story. They actually burn a lot of gameplay time in the storytelling, and which is very much a contrast to what Kids of Karendow is, because Kids of Karendow is very fast-paced JRPG. Still, there's a lot of story elements to it, and it is heavy on the story, but it's at a lightning fast pace and keeps things moving fairly quickly. So I don't know. It would be interesting. I don't know what Gary thinks, but when I was researching this podcast, and I thought it might be interesting to reach out to them. So
well, I mean, you know, I'll certainly give you my contact info for them. I they're still working there. I'll hook you up. So I mean,
sure, we'll take it.
Are you talking about the developer of Eastward or Chucklefish?
Chucklefish.
I don't know the developer of Eastward, but yeah, I know a couple of people from Chucklefish still, so I could contact them. So yeah, we could do that. I mean, it's worth reaching out to them. It's on the, you know, other people have asked me before, and I always pass along that info because they're always, I think, you know, that's something they're always looking for. So as any publisher would be. So.
All right, cool. Thanks. Okay,
yeah,
so
sure.
There hasn't been anything new since Treasure Adventure World. Now, would you say that the experiences that we had led to a hiatus, or?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it really came down to needing a break at first. That then became a longer break, and I was really enjoying the break. And you know, but no, I mean, Treasure Adventure World took a toll on me for sure. 6 years was a long time. I didn't think it was that long, so people were in my life were becoming impatient. My wife, other people, and they were very supportive. But at the same time, it's like you can't do this forever, right? At some point, we got to like release this, and you know, when I did, and it was clear that it wasn't going to be, you know, making the kind of money that where I could even like consider taking a little time off from work or whatever. I had my suddenly like I kind of had a panic attack because my near future. I'm very bad with like uncertainty in my life, and suddenly like all the plans I had kind of had in my head were just thrown out the window, and I had to completely figure out what I'm going to do now, like reassess my life, like what do I want. So I definitely had a bit of a panic attack, like kind of mental breakdown a little bit that I had to deal with. And then luckily, because of some of the amazing people that I met, actually Craig mostly, he hooked me up with this like job listing, helped me with my resume, and I actually ended up with a sweet gig in the industry that I'm really enjoying. And so like that was shortly after the game launched, and because so in between that time I was definitely freaking out. But once the job came around, and it was like, man, okay, maybe this was all kind of leading to this, and I should just focus on, you know, like stepping back from game development and just like, I don't know, enjoy playing games for a bit, enjoy, you know, seeing people and doing things that I was kind of avoiding because I was so focused on releasing this thing, you know. And so even though I haven't really considered anything super serious, I definitely still tinker with game development and game design. I've probably the most, I actually have worked on something for a significant amount of time, but then sort of like realized I wasn't having much fun with it. So I'm trying to like keep it back to a hobby again, where if I'm enjoying it, I'll work on something for a bit, and then if I'm not, I stop. And maybe something will come of that. We can talk later. Just recently, I did come up with a concept for a potential sequel of the Treasure Adventure World that kind of ties in a lot of these experiences I had and makes it more a simpler game, like a much simpler concept, but maybe like a little sequel for the characters of the game that also represents some of the feelings I've been having about, you know, things since I've released it. So that's a potential thing that I could do, and I've got like pages and pages of like ideas written down and some simple concepts like program and stuff, but I just don't know where they're going to go at this point. So.
want to talk about any of those ideas?
Well, I guess like I said, the one that I would be willing to share is that, and it's like it's mechanically, I don't really even know where it's going to go, but the idea it would basically be to take the characters from Treasure Adventure World and tell a story about what happened to them 20 years later, and tie that into sort of like what has happened to me for the past 3 years, and some of the feelings I have about going through the process of making a game, equating that to what the character went through in the first game. And
so are we doing one of those like meta games where it's about a game developer making a game? Because that's basically now been done before.
I know. I actually realized that not only that, but the exact way I want to do it has been done before. And that's why I realized I just stopped caring about that. That's actually what I wrote at the top of my page is, you are only doing this for you. I'm not designing this for anybody else. So if I may not, like I said, I may not release it. All I know is that suddenly I realized I had a story to tell and characters I could tell it with. And I was kind of excited about doing that. And so I started to list write my ideas and pages and pages. It just happened just a couple of weeks ago, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. I will just say that if I do make the game, I know the title. It might have a subtitle, but it'll be Treasure Adventureland, and I can give you that. So that's your exclusive.
Treasure Adventure Game, Treasure Adventure World, Treasure Adventure Land. Just promise me none of the characters end up drunk and naked in a ditch.
Wait, why not?
I might have to write that down. That's a good idea. I'm gonna steal that.
You go with it. That idea is yours.
It'll be like a little bit more mature in the storytelling, but I still want it to be like silly and the same characters, like I said, but just like maybe everything they did in that game was for naught potentially. Maybe it's not. Maybe they can go back in time, fix things. I don't know. We'll see.
So making Treasure Adventure Game, Treasure Adventure World, aside from everything else you've told us, what would you say have been the greatest challenges in it, in making specifically Treasure Adventure World?
I mean, see, I would think like there were certainly days, like individual days when like everything felt like it was falling apart, and you have those like, I don't know. Those actually, like, you forget about that later. At least I forgot about that stuff later. I think for me, what I think about is the hardest thing is thinking about how much time I spent sitting in front of that computer working on this one thing that just a handful of people got to experience and care about. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it feels like I could have done something better with that time, and it's hard for me to like reconcile that. So I just try not to think about it. I just think, oh, should I say, okay. Whatever.
Jesus, that kind of sounds kind
some of your best, most of your like 30s were this like sitting in front of this thing. Okay, whatever. Like but I try not to think that too, because I did make a beautiful thing, and I do, even though I've not been able to go back and play it, unfortunately, because it brings back my panic attacks every time I try.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
Yeah, but I know people love it. Some people did find it and love it. It has great reviews on Steam. Once in a while, I do give myself the privilege of reading some of the good reviews. Be like, okay, people liked it. But yeah, I've tried to play it a few times, and every time I get to a part where something's not working or like is like weird, and I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to do that, or there's like a missing thing. I'm like, it like rises back up, like, I should go back and fix it. Oh no, and then I just freak out. So
we are our own worst critics when it comes to games or any form of art. I see every bug and every flaw in Kids of Karendow as I've been developing it. Yeah, and it is the worst, but also no game is perfect. No AAA title is perfect. Like if you really want to like look at a lot of titles, you'll have like 3D models running towards a wall or something, and then their arms will be coming through the wall on the other side, and the camera will show that like, well, that's clearly not perfect. That's not what really happens in the real world.
I actually just read,
and we just accept it.
Yeah, so, I just read a quote from that was on Reddit, just like earlier, from Gabe Newell. He says the same thing about Half-Life. Like he says he can't play them. He can't go back and play them too, for the same reasons, because he just sees all the things. He sees all the compromises instead of seeing like what he created. He just sees, oh, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that, I wish we could have done that, and so he just like ends up not enjoying it. So he says he doesn't like to play his own games. So,
it's like actors who can't watch themselves on TV.
I can't watch the podcast there. I haven't brought myself to do it.
Oh yeah, I've never gone back and listened to myself.
I'll try to skim through it, like, when you send me like kind of like a rough, but yeah, I hate watching.
I edit these things, so I have to listen to every episode, and I've gotten so used to actually listening to myself. I feel like I'm getting better at this, but sometimes I just get worse depending on my mood or how tired I am or something like it,
or how much you drink.
That is a contributing factor. Yes.
Speaking of that, I need to fill mine up a little bit. Just a second. There we go.
All right, what do you have there?
He's got Maker's Mark.
Just some bourbon, but
that's some good bourbon there.
Yeah.
This is
does the job.
Elijah Craig.
Oh, there you go.
I got El Dorado rum again.
Nice. I'm glad we're all drinking hard liquor.
We've had to, at least I personally have had to cut back on the booze in the podcast because I tend to ramble. And
same thing. That's why I warned you beforehand. So.
But if you go back to like our first two episodes, Gary and I were actually drinking on the podcast. And editing the first episode was such a pain because I rambled so much. I had to like reposition entire segments so it made some sort of like coherent sense and like edit.
Were you drinking while you're editing too? That might help.
No, I wasn't, but in hindsight, maybe
you got to get back in that headspace.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's an element, Blair, where we should actually just leave that stuff in there, because most of the people that were watching this podcast are like friends, and maybe it might be entertaining for them to hear us kind of
see us drunk. Yeah, but the other thing is I would also like to expand our audience, which has not been going so well.
Nah, it's overrated.
Getting a following is overrated. Yes, totally.
Okay, so Stephen, what advice would you give to anyone in the game dev community, or maybe just someone new that's just starting out?
No, yeah, I feel like I've been very negative, and I really shouldn't be, because probably now is one of the best times to get into the industry. There's like so much going on right now. There's so many opportunities too. I mean, so all these small indie teams that, like I said, that inspired me are now full-fledged studios. All these people need talent, but I don't know. I just don't do it the way I did it, I guess. Like, honestly, probably if you're young, going to school and learning the stuff the right way and learning like best practices and all that stuff, so you don't waste a lot of time like I did. If you're ready to start making a game and you're like looking at publishers and stuff, you got to talk to people who've gone through it before. Get on Discord, find game development groups and talk to people who have like gone through it and just ask for advice, because like at this point,
maybe listen to podcasts like this one.
There you go. Yeah, perfect. Because like there's so many people who have gone through this now. We're like an indie like 3.0 at this point, right? Or I don't even know what we want to call it, but like
I don't even know where we're at.
Yeah, but like there's just so much information advice out there. You just got to take advantage of it. Don't be like me and sort of be like willfully ignorant of what it takes to make a commercial title, which is, if you're going to do it, if you want to do it as a hobby and just keep doing that, like that's probably, then you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You just do it for fun, make a game, and maybe you get lucky and your game gets finished and gets attention. But like, yeah, that's the advice I'm giving myself, is treat it like a hobby and make stuff for me and not worry about what other people want from it. So that's where I'm at. But like I said, it's not where people who are listening to this podcast are probably looking at right now, right? So.
So in your background there, you've got the star of Treasure Adventure World and his bird companion.
Mm-hmm.
If you may recall, he appeared in Burgle's Bounty.
That's right.
May you refresh my memory on his name.
The character?
Yeah, it's Peep, right?
So Peep is sort of like the given name. The character doesn't really have. We don't really learn the character's name in the game, and actually that's maybe something that will come into people. Yeah, new character. But the bird Wida ends up giving him the name Peep, so is like sort of like a nickname. So yeah, that's what we call him. But yeah, it's kind of like it's supposed to be a player insert character. But like I said, in the story that I'm writing for the sequel, potentially we will definitely give him a name, and figure out what's going on.
You don't want to keep Treasure Adventure Land doesn't keep Peep.
Oh, people be involved. The name Peep is going to come into play for sure. But
got it.
Yeah, it's all in there. I got my notebook right here. I'm not going to show you though.
That's fair. I I would love to see this series, this franchise continue. I know it's a lot of work, but I think what you've done is incredible. It's a lot of fun. It has a lot of heart, a lot of spirit. It's effectively a Metroidvania game, at least Treasure Adventure World was.
Mhm.
I would love to see you pick it up again. It was such a pleasure meeting you over the last few years and getting to see your process, your game, your creativity. It has just been such an honor, if I
Oh,
may
thank
say.
you, man. Oh yeah, for sure. And same with you. It's been great. We had a lot of fun.
We will continue to have a lot of fun. This
That's
doesn't
right.
have to end, man.
That's right. Well, I know. But see, that's the thing is, I feel like I'm like this with everything going on with pandemic and like everything, like climate change and like all this crap. Like I'm in a really negative space. It's not like destructive negative. Like I've got my little happiness here. I've made my little corner of my world, and I'm happy. But like when I look outside, like try to think about the future and stuff, I definitely get down. Lately, I've been getting layered down about stuff. So it's hard for me to like, think about like positively about like things. But MAGFest recently announced they're going to be coming back, and I was like, man, I'm thinking about doing it. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm going to, but
We've applied for Kids of
okay.
Karendow. I really
Yeah.
hope we get in.
Are you guys going to go either way, or
I
what
will
are you
go
thinking?
either way.
Okay.
I would love to go as an exhibitor rather than just an attendee.
Sure.
Though.
Yeah, yeah. Have you exhibited there before? I can't remember.
In
Did you have?
2017, we had Burgle's Bounty there.
That's right. Okay.
And then in 2020, just before the pandemic, at the pop-up table, we did show Kids of Karendow for a little while.
Oh, nice. That's right. That was the last time, probably when the last time I saw you actually was that.
You were there in 2020?
Yeah. Or was
Didn't
it?
you-
Was that the no? Wait, which no? 2019, I guess, was the last year I was there. Did they even do it in 2020? I didn't
They
realize
did. The very start.
Oh, no,
before
that was the
pandemic.
one. That was the one. Yeah, I saw you there. 2020. That was.
Then you would have met Gary there.
Yeah, you must have
Okay.
met me. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Well, you gotta call me a liar now. Sorry, Gary.
Well, I don't remember either, just because
I totally said
met a
it's
lot
good
of
to see
people.
you, not it's good nice to meet you. You misremember. Yeah.
Well,
But yeah, it would be awesome for us to be able to show our game at MAGFest.
Do you have a hotel lined up and all that?
no, we haven't booked a hotel yet, but we'll get on
See,
that once.
Now we're just talking like we're buddies. We gotta get back to podcast mode. Let's talk about game development.
Well, you know what? I like this stuff because the listeners then get to see what it's like being a game developer and all the shit we have to go through.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Those things. Some of those like conventions are some of the best times, right? I mean, like
MAGFest is a phenomenal
Yeah.
convention.
It's the best time.
People. It is the
it's
best.
the best like 3 days of the year.
Yeah,
for sure.
I've been twice already, and both times, like I went with Blair, and yeah, we just had the best time, like playing indie games and just playing like old arcade games that we used to play when we were kids.
Yeah, it's
Plus,
awesome.
the crab cakes are really good in National Harbor there. So
yeah, there's some good food, and like man, the chip tunes like show and Saturday night, and just like there's a great vibe there all weekend. Yeah, I love that, and I miss it. And I have a hotel booked and everything, so I'm ready to go. But I'm still a little pandemic nervous, to be honest. Even though I got
you know what? I've accepted. I don't care. I'm vaccinated. Whatever. Yeah. I'm gonna go. I'm accepting the risk that comes with it. I want to live my life.
That's how I feel like that's actually where we are at. I don't think we're ever gonna get away. I mean, it's possible that it'll fade away, but I think it could be this year for good anyways. We just got to get used to it being around and being on top of our vaccines, I guess.
I'm not a medical professional. I think this thing's endemic, like the flu and cold.
Right.
It's never going away. We'll have to do what we can to sort of manage it. But
the fact that they're allowing events like this to happen means that everybody knows this is just life. This has to be life as you just have to go back to normal. So, but at the same time, it's hard to pull that, to pull that plug and finally jump back in. But I'm probably, like I said, I'm like 90% there. So maybe I'll probably see you there. We'll see.
I would love to see you, and Gary would love to see you again, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll meet again for the very first time.
Yeah, we definitely shall meet again. But we've got one more question for you.
Oh, yeah.
And I expect you to answer this honestly, and you should not stroke Gary or I's ego. Of the New York-based indie gaming scene, indie game dev scene, what has been, and you can't say your own game either,
Sure. No, man, you got all the easy answers. Yeah. So I knew that you were going to answer this question, so I thought about it a little bit. And at first I was like, man, it's tough because, like I feel like most of the games I've played aren't necessarily, again, I go to a lot of these New York shows and I play someone's like early concept, and then I never get around to playing the finished game or seeing where it comes. But then it occurred to me, like, man, even before I like really got into the New York game development scene, one of my favorite games ever was the Blackwell Epiphany series, or the Blackwell Adventure Games by Dave Gilbert, who's a Brooklyn guy, and he's not like involved in necessarily in like the same scene we are, but he was involved in the NYU scene, and and so I ended up going down to some of the NYU meetups in Brooklyn and meeting him a couple times. And before I ever met him, and before I got into like the New York scene, I played through all like 6 of his games. And they're these point-and-click adventure games. If you don't know, there's a whole series on Blackwell is the series, and they have different subtitles. And they're just like little point-and-click adventure games where you're like a detective who can see ghosts, and it all takes place in New York. So there's like all these cool like pixelated like renditions of famous landmarks and around New York City and stuff. And he's a real like New York
podcast.
Yeah, man, he's a real like old like New York developer for sure. And even like that, he's like had a lot of success. But like I've played through his games and just can't get enough of them. Like it's like I play one after the other. So yeah, I gotta say him for sure. So yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm going to share my personal favorite, and it may sound really weird because Sam is actually a friend of mine, but it is Zarvat, the game about depressed kids.
Oh, yes, I have played that, and that is a solid game. For sure.
Yeah, and it hit me so hard because Sam, it's a game about depression, but it's actually not a game about depression that makes you depressed necessarily. It's a fun sort of adventure action game, like shoot 'em up, and he understands the emotional state of depression as someone who has experienced it on at least when he was younger. Maybe he still does in such a accurate way that he can portray it so well. Like Sam is such a talented artist in general, and his ability to convey the stuff I've always thought is just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also a really fun game too. Like that.
Yeah,
like,
that too. Yeah, it's very fun.
Like you pick it up. No, it's cool because it shows like both sides of it, right? Because like, you're right, it's a solid game, and it's like you pick that up and you're instantly having fun. Like you can't not pick it up and have fun with it. So that fact that it's also got that on top of it, yeah, that's what you get. That's the double whammy, right? Like, that's like Celeste, right? Like same kind of thing. Like I love games like that nail both the deep storytelling that makes you think, but then also attach like a fun game to it. Yeah, you got to have both for sure. So.
How about you, Gary?
I would say Kung Fu Kickball.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. Well, we'll let Jonah know that you called this game out again on the podcast, and that is a great game. It is really good. And I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but his publisher has had him add a new character to the game as well. So I may have just spoiled that a little bit.
Oh boy! All right, I was going to ask for more, but I won't.
Well, that's all that I know, and
okay.
I'm going to circle back and ask him if I need to edit that out. But it's not out yet. I don't know when it's coming out.
So I used to live in Rochester, and there's like a scene that's like showing up in Rochester too. And I once saw see their games pop up, and it's like some friends of mine from there that like got into indie games. It's always fun to see like people I used to know at different places I lived are like getting into the indie scene. So they what was the name of their game that they did? I can really remember it now. It was like a roguelike game, but I can't remember. But yeah, I'm still thinking
people oversaturation. We're screwed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love doing this. I can never give it up.
Yeah, you definitely took a different, like you just like moved right on. Like you released your first game and you're just like, I'm ready for the next challenge. Make it bigger and better. I give you a lot of credit for that, man.
No, there was like we released that in, I think it was April of 2018. No, it was March of 2018.
I think it was like February. Wasn't it?
Maybe, yeah, you're right. It was February of 2018. And by March, I was already doing conceptual artwork for the art style for Kids of Karendow.
That was already like after an emotional roller coaster for you.
And I had an emotional roller coaster from February for that next month.
So we were going through the same thing at the same time, because I released Treasure Adventure World in February 2018 too. Didn't we do it Same.
We may have done it together. We
That's probably why
did.
we didn't realize it, because we were both in our own worlds like so much. We're like,
and I just remember thinking to myself, well, so it was and I don't want to like call out like any of our friends or in the scene, but you know, I might as well because it's fine. Like it's honest. So computer lunch, Andrew Garahan, we've had on the podcast, Zelda Singularity, great game. It is a lot of fun.
I thought about actually bringing that one up for my favorite.
They released Mama Hawk around the same time that we released Burgle's Bounty, and there Mama Hawk. There were 2 other games in the playcrafting community that were released this week. So it was Mama Hawk, Burgle's Bounty, and 2 others. 3 of the 4 games were featured on the App Store. Burgle's Bounty was the one that did not. And I remember seeing that on Twitter, and I was thinking to myself, well, fuck that. And it was painful. And well, you know what, maybe Andrew will listen to this, maybe he won't. Because Mama Hawk was a great game. I'm not disparaging their game at all. I think I really enjoyed it. But I remember the response that Andrew and Kati had to how well it did when it was featured. And it fell well below their expectations of what they wanted. And here I had a game that was not featured at all. We made about $60 at that point off of it. I think the total thing was $80 at the end. And I realized my mental state was better than theirs. So it was all about managed expectations, I guess.
Well, that's how I feel too, man. Because the same thing, like there's people like ultimately, like if you looked at how much my game made, some people would have found it a success. Not for 6 years of work, probably, but like if they maybe a year of work or whatever. But like that took, you know, years and years of putting on sale and everything. But like, it didn't matter. My expectations were different because of maybe they were wrong. Actually, they definitely were wrong. But my expectations were higher, and I had a vision for what my future was going to be like after the game released. And even I had multiple, like, you know, it's like that, right? Like where the timeline split. Game releases, here are the options. And it ultimately kind of was like the worst. It's like I was like in the bad timeline, like the really bad. That's how I felt to me, you know, like
the multiverse bad timeline kind of.
Like there was a really amazing timeline where everything is amazing. Like I had like a golden castle, and then there's like the one where the game does well enough we can continue and we feel good, and then there's like the dark timeline where everything is shit. And that's where I felt like, even though again I was wrong, that's where I felt like I was looking forward to. So I just like broke down and was like, I can't live in the dark timeline. This sucks.
So Gary, which timeline is Kids of Karendow going to go into?
It's going to go into the one where Kids of Karendow makes so much money that Disney wants to buy
it. Don't get my expectations that high.
That sounds like the dark timeline to me. No, that sounds like it'd be a pretty sweet deal to sell anything to Disney.
Yeah, I don't think it's going there, but I mean, it's a great thought, right? So
I know, the thing is, like, I don't think I would want to, even if they offered me a huge check.
Oh, you're right. I'm not sure.
I'd sell it. I'd sell Treasure Adventure World. If somebody wrote me a big check today and was like someone cut me $100,000 check and was like, we want the rights on Treasure Adventure World, you got it.
And just like sleep naked in a pile of money.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, that's not like fuck you money, but that's enough where I'd be like, you know what? I feel like it was worth my time to make that world financially.
You know, yeah, now that Gary mentions that, if someone drove to me a truckload of money,
hey, there's new ideas, right? I can make a new character.
There's new ideas, yeah. I guess what's my price tag on our intellectual property and our ideas, right? I mean, I would actually have to be put in that situation to really know how I'd respond.
Yeah, that's when Chucklefish first came to me and they were like, we want to propose a project. I remember being like, can you just buy me out? Like, because I didn't really want to make like the start for, you know, like I knew what it was like. I just finished a game. I was like, man, do I really want to jump back into making a remake of a game I just finished? So I think I actually talked to like, can you guys, like, do you have any interest in just like buying the concept and this character? And they're like, no, you got to make it. Yeah. So you're right. See, it's easy to like, you know, to have a concept or an idea to own it, but to make that into a game, that's the hard part, you know. So
circling back, Would you be willing to share how well Treasure Adventure World did financially?
I mean, I don't really want to talk numbers. I don't even have them in front of me. But I guess the way I can put it is that, like, if I had worked in Treasure Adventure World for 2 years, I'd be like, okay, that made enough money for me to feel like it was worth, not even, I'd really have to say like a year and a half. You know what I mean? Like, plus, honestly, that's not even considering having to pay other people. So no, it's like basically 1 year. If I turned it into 1 year to make, I would have felt like, okay, I can keep doing this and feel like it's like I could sustain this.
You could live.
You know what I'm saying? So that's all. That's how I'll put it. I don't really want to talk about actual numbers. And that was actually after
Treasure Adventure World. The scope of that game was never going to be done in a year unless you had a large.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that was probably after a year of sales. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it sold that instantly. It took going on sale multiple times to make it enough where I was like, okay. But then, as you know, like the tail drops off pretty fast after that, and then unless you release DLC or keep it going or whatever, then it's kind of hard to keep making money off something. It makes a little bit, I still get little bits here and there trickles in, but I also had
you get some money on Switch,
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, I had to pay back. There was like I did get some money loaned to me essentially that I had to pay back. I had to, I was owing part of why I had a breakdown was because there were so many people kind of counting on the success too, because the artists, some of them had percentages, that they were getting on the back end. So that's disappointing to like break that news to them. But, so after all that, like, it's like a little bit of, the money that I have is like kind of like there where if I make another project, I can use that to like pay for artists and some music and stuff, you know what I mean? Like a little slush fund, but it's not enough to really do much with. So.
Yeah. All right. Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's just part of the challenges of doing indie games. It's I think it's fair to say that's a shitty reality.
There are downsides to it, yeah, for sure. But like I said, you can take the positive too, and the positives are like, again, like awesome friendships, like cool, great relationships, and like just being part of something that, like, I mean, the indie scene is awesome. Like, in making video games is awesome. Like, everyone loves it.
That's the positive spin we need here.
Oh yeah.
Because Gary and I have been doing this podcast since April of this year, and of everyone we've talked to, we've had 2 people on that have been financially successful, but we've had 0 people on who said they would give it up and back away and never do it again. So that says a lot.
Right.
Like that's sort of the drive that we have. I think it's more as artists, more than anything, to keep this going, because it is our passion. It is what we love doing. We love being creative. I think for me, this is a creative outlet is the most important thing. Arguably right now, aside from my partner, but in my life, like, I think I can safely say that this is a creative outlet for me. It is one of the most important things in my life. How about you, Gary?
I think I agree with that.
I'm using this opportunity to kind of like get back into music, right? Like, when we did Burgle's Bounty, that was probably the first time in a long time that I've made music. Like, after doing Kids at Karendow back in high school when we did, I pretty much haven't really done anything up until, we started doing Burgle's Bounty, right? So now I get a chance to do like a much bigger soundtrack, something that is most likely to have a much bigger audience than Burgle's Bounty ever did. So that's what excites me about this. Well, and I'm also learning a lot, like through this process of trying to do, like something that has, I guess, a lot of different types of music, right? Whereas like Burgle's Bounty, I really focused on having a certain theme throughout the whole soundtrack. Like, each song has to kind of sound somewhat similar, right? But with Kids at Karendow, I'm trying to make it a little bit more broader in terms of styles. So I'm really excited about kind of learning that element too. But at the same time, it's really, really challenging.
Well, now we gotta get an audience for Kids at Karendow, so Gary's got an audience for his music. No pressure. All right. Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Dude, this was great.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for doing this. This is great. We really do want to see Treasure Adventure Land in the not too distant future. Or if there's a Switch port of, Treasure Adventure World, that would be awesome too. Just saying.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry.
Chelsea, I love to see it on there too. Believe me. But the thing is, I know how much work it takes. So it's.
Oh, I know it's a lot of work.
Can't fool me.
But give it like maybe 3-4 years ago, I was like, "Where's the Mac version?" Now I'm like, "Where's the Switch version?"
Yeah, maybe when I get bored of other stuff, I'll like, all right, time to crank this out. We'll see. This has been great, and it's nice just catching up with you and stuff. And I guess MAGFest. Now it's me to MAGFest is the place. So
we will be at MAGFest regardless of whether or not Kids of Karendow is there, but we will be there.
All right, cool.
All right, peace. Thank you so much, dude.
Yep.
Thanks. Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks so much, guys. Yeah.